The emergent layer is a high-stakes frontier. Here, solar radiation dictates life, and verticality dictates survival. Folivores spend immense energy simply digesting toxic leaves. Rest is not a luxury, it is a metabolic necessity. But lethargy creates opportunity. The harpy eagle relies on absolute stillness to mask its immense size. These talons exert hundreds of pounds of pressure per square inch. They are designed for instantaneous trauma. A single shift in posture changes the geometry of the hunt. The target is isolated. Navigating this three-dimensional labyrinth at high speed requires advanced spatial memory and rapid neurological processing. The wingspan is relatively short for a bird this massive, an evolutionary compromise for maneuverability. Primates rely on peripheral vision and acoustic alarms. When both fail, gravity claims its due. The initial kinetic shock is often enough to paralyze. The struggle is brief, but catastrophic. Carrying equivalent body weight defies aerodynamic logic, requiring extraordinary muscular output. The tropical deluge arrives without warning. It is a sudden, violent reset of the thermal landscape. Epiphytes rely on this violent delivery. Lacking roots in soil, the sky is their only sustenance. Water orchestrates every rhythm here. It masks scent, dampens sound, and forces movement to a halt. This vertical river flushes nutrients from the high canopy directly toward the starving roots beneath. The canopy effectively absorbs the storm's fury, acting as a massive biological sponge. The loss of a troop member triggers acute neurological stress. Social cohesion is their primary defense. The hyoid bone amplifies this alarm call across 3 miles of dense timber. It is a biological siren. This broadcast serves a dual purpose, warning the extended network and marking the boundaries of their trauma. Maternal investment is incredibly high. One momentary lapse in vigilance carries permanent consequences. Fleeing through rain-slicked vegetation increases the risk of a fatal fall, but remaining exposed is no longer an option. The canopy apex predator has secured its caloric intake for the week. The hunt was flawless. A specialized, serrated beak functions as a surgical tool, stripping energy-dense muscle from bone with absolute efficiency. Even at the top of the hierarchy, situational awareness cannot lapse. Scavengers are perpetually drawn to the scent. Gravity ensures that nothing goes to waste. The byproducts of this kill will fuel the scavengers in the shadows below. Survival here is not malicious. It is a precise, mechanical transfer of energy from one organism to another. As the front passes, the thermal engine of the Amazon restarts. Humidity levels instantly spike. The rapid evaporation creates microclimates. The suffocating heat dictates the rhythm of the afternoon. We follow the water downward, leaving the sunlit battlegrounds of the emergent zone behind. In the understory, sunlight is reduced to less than 2%. Here, life operates on chemical warfare rather than sight. The kings of this realm are entirely terrestrial, and their dominion is built on absolute, collective obedience. Carrying this load is the biomechanical equivalent of a human lifting a truck with their jaw. These smaller castes act as aerial defense, protecting the carriers from parasitic flies that seek to lay eggs on their heads. This isn't just foraging, it is an industrial supply chain feeding the largest agricultural complex in the jungle. But supply chains are vulnerable to disruption. Intersecting pheromone trails inevitably lead to conflict. Soldier ants lack the biology to process leaves. Their sole evolutionary purpose is lethal defense. Armed with the most painful venom in the insect kingdom, a bullet ant operates with impunity in the understory. However, collective sacrifice can neutralize mechanical superiority. The hive mind prioritizes the colony over the individual. Attrition wins the micro-war. The trail must remain open. The underground fungus gardens require constant feeding to survive. The disruption lasts mere seconds. In a superorganism, casualties are immediately written out of the equation. They carry the forest canopy deep underground, feeding a symbiotic fungus that, in turn, feeds millions. Above ground, The architectural footprint of these ancient trees dictates the flow of terrestrial traffic. As the seasonal transition accelerates, the understory prepares for the inevitable drowning of the Amazon basin. The water table is rising by the hour. Terrestrial territory is rapidly shrinking, forcing isolated populations into closer proximity. Cold-blooded ambush predators must constantly recalibrate their hunting grounds to stay above the waterline. The Jacobson's organ in the roof of its mouth analyzes chemical particles. It is smelling the heat of displaced prey. The understory is a realm of shadows and chemical signatures, where visual camouflage is standard, and thermal detection is the ultimate weapon. Evolution here favors stillness. Movement is the greatest liability in a crowded ecosystem. Aposematism and mimicry work in tandem. The illusion of a larger predator's eye buys fractions of a second to escape. But illusions fail against mechanical perfection. Reflexes dictate survival when margins of error are non-existent. Every cubic inch of this space is occupied, contested, and fiercely defended. As the water reclaims the forest floor, the biological hierarchy shifts to favor those who can navigate the aquatic divide. The ultimate phantom of the basin requires massive caloric intake, and the rising waters funnel prey directly into its path. Feline biomechanics allow for absolute stealth, even in an environment designed to amplify sound. Whiskers act as highly sensitive tactile sensors, mapping the immediate environment and detecting minute shifts in air and water currents. The largest rodent on Earth is semi-aquatic, but on land, its bulk makes it highly vulnerable to a calculated ambush. Every muscle fiber is primed. The predatory sequence requires immense patience to close the distance without detection. Prey animals operate on a hair-trigger alarm system. A single snapped twig or displaced ripple can ruin hours of stalking. The predator meticulously calculates foot placement, utilizing submerged structures to avoid the acoustic giveaway of splashing water. This is the agonizing reality of the wild. Survival hangs suspended in the space between action and reaction. As the ecosystem braces for the outcome below, the vertical architecture of the Amazon continues its relentless cycle of life and death. Beneath the violent mammalian struggles on the surface lies a subterranean megacity. Its scale rivals human engineering. These tunnels stretch for miles, plunging 20 feet deep to bypass the reach of the rising floodwaters. This is the agricultural heart of the colony, a highly cultivated, carefully climate-controlled fungus garden. The ants themselves cannot digest the toxic leaves they harvest from the canopy above. Instead, they feed the vegetation to this specialized fungus, cultivating it with the dedication of master farmers. The fungus metabolizes the toxins and produces these protein-rich bodies, the sole food source for millions of ant larvae. But monocultures are inherently vulnerable. A parasitic mold constantly threatens to wipe out their entire food supply. To combat this, the ants harbor symbiotic bacteria on their own bodies, producing targeted antibiotics to eradicate the invader. It is a 50-million-year-old pharmaceutical industry, perfected entirely without conscious thought. The colony requires immense amounts of oxygen. This sophisticated ventilation network relies on surface winds to cycle the toxic carbon dioxide out. Back on the surface, the supply lines remain highly vulnerable to highly specialized, localized threats. The phorid fly is a parasitoid. It does not want to eat the ants. It wants to use them as living incubators. The ant senses the vibration. If the fly lands, it will inject an egg directly into the worker's head capsule. The aerial defense cast attempts to swat the fly away, but the attacker's speed is neurologically superior. The surgical strike takes less than a tenth of a second. The payload is successfully delivered. The larva will eventually consume the ant's brain. Chemical signals force the infected worker to exile itself, protecting the colony. Individual life is expendable. The superorganism prioritizes strict biological quarantine above all else. The floor of the Amazon is a factory of decay. In this humidity, death is immediately repurposed by chemical engineers. Slime molds, single-celled organisms acting as a collective, map the most efficient routes to nutrients without possessing a brain. A single drop of water triggers a mechanical release, launching millions of spores into the dense, stagnant air. These invisible clouds settle on everything. Every fallen leaf, every dead insect is swiftly reclaimed by the fungal network. But some structures resist decay. Fortresses built from chewed wood and specialized saliva stand as monuments to a different kind of warfare. Termites are blind detritivores, turning dead wood into energy. Their nests are architectural marvels, engineered for climate control and defense. Because they are soft-bodied and highly nutritious, they cannot travel in the open. These mud highways shield them from predators and the sun. But static defenses are useless against specialized siege engines. The tamandua possesses claws capable of tearing through concrete-hard clay, and a prehensile tail that anchors it to the vertical battlefield. Its 16-inch tongue acts as a biological adhesive whip, capable of darting in and out of the breach 3 times per second. The colony counterattacks. Nasute termites have evolved past mechanical jaws, developing a potent form of chemical artillery. They spray a noxious, resin-like glue containing toxic terpenes. It fouls the predator's senses and binds to hair and skin. The chemical cocktail is deeply irritating to the mammalian respiratory system. The pain scales rapidly with exposure. The raid is repelled. The tamandua will only consume a small fraction of the colony before the chemical defenses force a retreat. Within seconds, the damage assessment is complete. The biological machine simply patches the wound and continues its endless cycle. But chemical defenses are only effective against solitary attackers. They are useless against an overwhelming, chaotic front. Army ants do not build nests. They are a nomadic, hyper-aggressive swarm that sweeps the forest floor clean of all living matter. They are entirely blind. They navigate strictly by chemical pheromones and the vibrations of fleeing prey. Speed is irrelevant. The swarm casts a net of millions of interlocking jaws, dismantling insects and arachnids 10 times their size. The only defense against the swarm is verticality. The understory becomes a chaotic refugee camp of displaced insects. But the vanguard of the swarm explores every vertical axis. The pressure pushes life higher into the canopy. Opportunists thrive on this chaos. Antbirds follow the swarm for miles, feasting not on the ants, but on the terrified refugees they flush out. In the Amazon, one predator's chaotic hunt is another's meticulously scheduled harvest. The swarm's relentless advance is suddenly halted by the only force in the forest they cannot dismantle. The seasonal floodwaters are cresting. For the terrestrial armies, water represents an absolute barrier and instant death. The collective hive mind registers the chemical shift in humidity and seamlessly redirects millions of units in seconds. The forest floor is abruptly abandoned by its terrestrial monarchs, transitioning the battleground to a purely aquatic frontier. As the water deepens, the oxygen-deprived flooded forest creates a temporary, alien ecosystem. Aquatic predators now patrol the very spaces where jaguars and leafcutters hunted just hours before. The arowana has evolved perfect surface vision, tracking the silhouettes of insects that were pushed upwards by the flood. The margin of error between the submerged world and the vertical world has shrunk to a matter of inches. Powered by an explosive muscular contraction, the fish bridges the elemental divide with lethal precision. The boundary between water and air is a dynamic, bloody threshold. The flood dictates a vertical migration. Every organism must move higher, crowding into the mid-level epiphytes. We follow the biological pressure upward, entering a realm of suspended water and toxic warnings. In this crowded vertical space, camouflage is abandoned. Here, survival is broadcast in brilliant, lethal color. The chemical warfare shifts from the dark earth below to the bright, rain-soaked leaves above. A single drop of water shatters the silence. In an environment suspended in absolute tension, the smallest acoustic trigger is enough to break the stalemate. The ambush is a calculation of explosive physics. The jaguar trades absolute stealth for overwhelming, instantaneous momentum. Capybaras rely on the water as a sanctuary from terrestrial predators, but this apex predator is uniquely adapted to bridge both realms. Unlike other big cats that asphyxiate their prey by targeting the throat, the jaguar employs a far more brutal biomechanical strategy, generating nearly 2,000 pounds of bite force per square inch. The canine teeth pierce the temporal bone directly, severing the brainstem. Death is instantaneous. The sheer mechanical efficiency minimizes the struggle, conserving the predator's vital energy in the suffocating heat. Securing the kill is only the first phase. The scent of blood in the water is a powerful chemical beacon, drawing scavengers from every direction. Hearing is tuned to the lowest frequencies, detecting the approach of armored competitors that rule the deeper channels. As the seasonal rains peak, the Amazon River swells, drowning thousands of square miles of dense jungle under 30 feet of water. This creates the Igapo, a flooded blackwater forest. It is a temporary, alien biome where terrestrial geography is completely erased. Fish migrate out of the main river channels into the forest, relying on the submerged canopy for a massive influx of carbohydrates. They serve as the primary seed dispersers of the flood season, carrying the genetic material of the forest for miles in their digestive tracts. Plant architecture aggressively adapts to the buoyancy of the water, engineering massive surface areas to monopolize the fractured sunlight. But navigating this submerged labyrinth is perilous. The dense root systems provide perfect cover for highly coordinated aquatic packs. Giant river otters are the apex pack hunters of the Amazon. Growing up to 6 feet long, they operate with a highly complex social intelligence. Acoustic communication is constant and chaotic. Their vocalizations dictate formation, target acquisition, and territorial boundaries. Underwater, they are hydrodynamically flawless. Dense fur traps a layer of air, keeping them entirely dry and insulated against the water temperature. In black water, where visibility drops to zero, highly innervated vibrissae, whiskers, detect microscopic pressure waves generated by fleeing fish. Piranhas are formidable scavengers, but against the coordinated herding of the river wolves, they are easily outmaneuvered. Precision is critical. The otter targets the spine, instantly paralyzing the prey, to avoid the piranha's razor-sharp teeth. Because of their hyperactive metabolisms, a giant otter must consume up to 10 pounds of fish daily, simply to survive. This immense caloric requirement demands strict territorial control. They do not tolerate intruders in their hunting grounds. But this territory overlaps with an ancient, heavily armored colossus that predates the mammalian reign. The black caiman is the undisputed heavyweight of the basin, an opportunistic ambush predator capable of taking down adult jaguars. It generates thrust with minimal water displacement. It is an acoustic ghost, closing the distance with terrifying stealth. The alpha's sensory network registers the subtle shift in the current. The threat is immediately verified. Fleeing triggers a predatory response. To survive, the pack must engage in psychological warfare, presenting an overwhelming, united front. The caiman is a solitary ambush hunter. It calculates risk based on energy expenditure and the probability of sustaining an injury. The otters exploit their superior mobility. They harass the reptile's blind spots, transforming an ambush into an unsustainable war of attrition. The biological cost of fighting 6 coordinated predators outweighs the caloric reward. The ancient reptile quietly seeds the shallows. Territorial dominance is maintained. The pack relies on extreme, unified aggression to manipulate the behavior of giants. As the afternoon wears on, the thermal dynamics of the flooded forest begin to shift. The water absorbs the dying heat of the sun. The boto, or Amazon river dolphin, navigates this claustrophobic environment with adaptations entirely distinct from ocean-dwelling cetaceans. Unlike marine dolphins, their cervical vertebrae are unfused, allowing them to bend their necks and maneuver through the complex, woody labyrinth. Vision is largely obsolete in the blackwater. They scan the mud with sensory bristles, hunting for crustaceans hiding in the terrestrial decay. They are the ethereal ghosts of the flood, highly intelligent mammals that have fully surrendered to an aquatic evolution. But the water represents only the basement of this ecosystem. Above the floodline, the intense humidity creates entirely new microworlds. In the mid-level canopy, the struggle is not about navigating the flood, but capturing the atmospheric moisture it generates. These epiphytes are biological cisterns, trapping rainwater to create isolated, suspended pools. Each plant acts as a completely self-sustaining micro-ecosystem, hosting life that may never touch the forest floor. For the architects of chemical defense, these suspended pools represent the ultimate nursery and the focus of immense parental investment. Parental investment in amphibians is exceptionally rare. For this female, survival demands defying the fundamental rules of her species. The forest floor is teeming with predators that specialize in consuming amphibian eggs. To secure her lineage, she must engineer a high-altitude sanctuary. Biomechanical suction allows her to bypass gravity. She is carrying a payload that equals 20% of her total body mass. The vertical highway is heavily contested. A confrontation here would result in instant, venomous paralysis. Aposematic coloration is an absolute deterrent. Her neon pigmentation broadcasts a lethal toxicity that overrides the spider's predatory instincts. This specific epiphyte architecture is her target. It represents an isolated aquatic world entirely divorced from the river below. The relocation is complete. The micropool acts as a biological vault, shielding the vulnerable offspring from the chaos of the terrestrial jungle. This suspended body of water is called a phytotelmata. Though microscopic in scale, it operates with the exact brutal logic of a full-sized ocean. Resources here are violently finite. The aquatic vegetation provides minimal caloric value for a developing organism, and isolation does not guarantee safety. Apex predators exist at every scale, colonizing even these isolated, airborne oceans. The nymph's modified jaw functions as a biological harpoon, deploying in less than 1/10 of a second. The geometry of the plant offers the only refuge. The tadpole is trapped in a suffocating stalemate with its executioner. But the mother's investment is not strictly limited to transportation. She must now act as the sole supply chain for this aquatic vault. The vibration is a deeply ingrained acoustic code. It signals the immediate delivery of a specialized biological package. The female sacrifices her own reproductive potential to fuel her living offspring. This process is known as ophagy. The egg is more than just raw protein and fat. It is a highly engineered chemical capsule. The mother's lethal toxicity is entirely synthesized from the toxic mites and ants she consumes on the forest floor. By feeding her offspring these specialized eggs, she directly transfers her accumulated alkaloids. She is literally feeding them their future armor. She will repeat this massive vertical migration for multiple tadpoles across dozens of plants, burning staggering amounts of energy. The mid-canopy is heavily sculpted by microclimates. Every branch intersection acts as a unique platform for specialized biological warfare. Epiphytic orchids rely on intense visual displays and potent olfactory beacons to manipulate the flight paths of pollinators. But floral beacons attract more than just pollinators. They attract the architects of static ambush. The eyelash viper does not hunt, it waits. It relies entirely on absolute geometric perfection to merge with the floral architecture. These facial pits house a highly specialized membrane. It functions as a biological thermal imaging camera. Cold-blooded insects do not register on this sensory network. The viper ignores the butterfly completely. It is calibrated for a specific, high-metabolism target. Hummingbirds live at the absolute extreme edge of metabolic physics. Their biology is a furnace that constantly demands fuel. Hovering requires catastrophic energy expenditure. To survive the afternoon, it must visit hundreds of these floral stations. The bird's intense body heat instantly floods the viper's thermal receptors. The targeting parameters are locked. Time perception varies wildly across species. To the hummingbird, the world moves in slow motion. To the viper, reality is a sequence of instantaneous triggers. The strike occurs in less than 70 milliseconds. The kinetic impact alone is often enough to shatter avian ribs. A hemotoxic venom is instantly injected, designed to immediately break down muscle tissue and neutralize the high-speed engine of the bird. The ambush is a calculation of profound efficiency. Days of absolute stillness, traded for a single, hyper-lethal fraction of a second. In order to consume prey larger than its own skull, the viper's jawbones operate independently, held together only by highly elastic ligaments. The digestion process will spike the reptile's metabolism by 10,000%. It will not need to eat again for over a month. As the afternoon peaks, the true physical weight of the Amazon basin makes itself known. The intense equatorial sun bakes the saturated forest. Millions of gallons of water are violently pulled back up into the atmosphere. Plants aggressively close their stomata to prevent complete dehydration. The air becomes so thick it alters the acoustics of the jungle. The biological pressure shifts upward once again. We follow the rising thermals back to the emergent layer, where the solar radiation is absolute. The canopy roof is an oceanic expanse of vegetation. It is a completely distinct ecosystem, operating thousands of feet above the submerged roots. As the angle of the sun shifts, so do the hierarchies. The survivors of the daytime raids prepare for the psychological shift of dusk. The pack reestablishes its acoustic perimeter. The day was defined by loss, but the night requires immediate social reunification. The canopy is an acoustic ocean. For the red howler monkey, voice is the ultimate instrument of territorial defense and social cohesion. This specialized bone structure turns his throat into a natural amplifier, projecting his dominance across 3 square miles of dense timber. It is a roll call, a warning, and a declaration of survival. The morning's fatal ambush requires an immediate re-establishment of their borders. Rival troops constantly monitor these broadcasts. Any sign of weakness or silence will be exploited through territorial expansion. Listening is as critical as broadcasting. The acoustic landscape maps the exact location and strength of every competitor in the sector. The Alpha's broadcast signals that the immediate airspace is clear. The survivors cautiously break their physical quarantine. Navigating the high canopy requires constant risk assessment. Every gap between branches is a potential fatal drop. The prehensile tail operates as a fully functional fifth limb, capable of supporting their entire body weight during complex vertical maneuvers. This hairless tactile pad provides intense sensory feedback, reading the structural integrity of the wood before committing to the crossing. Primates do not process trauma in isolation. The biological response to severe stress is extreme physical proximity. The neurological imprint of a predator strike is deep. Cortisol levels remain dangerously high, keeping their central nervous systems on a hair trigger. A troop crippled by stress cannot forage efficiently. The alpha must initiate the chemical regulation of his pack. Grooming is the primary medical mechanism for primates. It is a highly ritualized behavior that transcends simple hygiene. While it physically removes salt deposits and parasites, the true function of grooming is entirely neurochemical. The rhythmic, tactile stimulation triggers a massive release of endorphins and oxytocin, aggressively suppressing the body's stress hormones. This biological feedback loop cascades through the hierarchy. To touch and be touched is the fundamental currency of their society. Facial expressions and vocalizations reinforce the physical bond. It reassures the individual of their exact place within the protective web of the troop. Within 20 minutes, the collective heart rate of the troop has dropped. The psychological quarantine is successfully lifted. As the adults regulate the trauma, the younger generation tests the structural limits of their environment through play. Play is not frivolous. It is crucial biomechanical training, developing the spatial awareness necessary to survive high-speed chases. The margins for error remain zero. The maternal network immediately polices reckless behavior. Knowledge is transferred vertically through generations. Survival in the emergent layer must be taught. It is not purely instinctual. The social reset is complete. But the biological clock is relentless. With the trauma managed, the focus instantly shifts back to caloric intake. This wide yawn is not an expression of fatigue, nor is it a threat display. It is a physiological reset, flooding the brain with oxygen and stretching the facial muscles in preparation for intense foraging. The golden hour has arrived. They have less than 60 minutes to fill their stomachs before darkness renders them completely blind. The alpha navigates using a highly detailed mental map of the territory, tracking the precise fruiting cycles of thousands of individual trees. He leads them to a strangler fig. In an ecosystem dominated by toxic leaves, ripe fruit represents a rare, massive injection of pure sugar. But sugar is universally prized. The canopy is a fiercely competitive economy, and the most valuable resources are always guarded. The macaw's beak is an industrial-grade vise, generating hundreds of pounds of pressure. It is both a feeding tool and a lethal weapon. Interspecies conflict in the canopy is a high-stakes game of bluffing and physical posturing. Mammalian bulk ultimately overrides avian aggression. The alpha weaponizes his sheer weight to destabilize the bird's perches. The birds surrender the physical space, taking to the air, where their biological advantages are uncontested. The troop secures the perimeter and begins to gorge. There is no social sharing here. Foraging is frantic and highly individualized. The biological imperative is volume. They must pack their digestive tracts to full capacity to generate the internal heat required for the night. Arboreal primates are incredibly messy eaters, dropping up to half the fruit they pick. But in the Amazon, waste is an illusion. Their sloppy foraging directly subsidizes the terrestrial ecosystem. The canopy feeds the dark floor in a continuous, vertical supply chain. But the feeding window is closing fast. The equatorial sun drops at an astonishing rate, plunging the forest into shadow. The transition between day and night is the most dangerous shift in the jungle. It is a handover of power from the visual hunters to the acoustic assassins. As the agile primates scramble to survive, other canopy residents navigate this environment through a completely opposite evolutionary strategy. The sloth exists in a state of perpetual energy conservation. Its metabolism operates at a fraction of the speed of a primate's. It does not outrun predators. It simply ceases to exist visually. Its fur hosts a symbiotic algae, providing perfect camouflage against the foliage. By moving at speeds undetectable by the predatory trigger responses of eagles and jaguars, sloths achieve a bizarre invulnerability through sheer lethargy. Reptiles scramble to absorb the last dying remnants of solar radiation, banking thermal energy to survive the coming temperature drop. The thermal engine of the Amazon powers down. The rising cooler air shifts the barometric pressure, signaling the end of the diurnal cycle. For the monkeys, lingering near a food source after dark is suicide. Nocturnal predators memorize these locations to ambush sleeping targets. Selecting a sleeping site requires architectural precision. They must isolate themselves from the heavy trunks that act as highways for climbing predators. By choosing the thinnest viable branches, they create an early warning system. Any heavy predator, like a jaguar or a boa, will cause catastrophic vibrations long before it reaches them. They form a dense biological knot. This sleeping matrix minimizes exposed surface area, trapping body heat as the jungle rapidly cools. Their prehensile tails lock into place automatically, a muscular reflex that prevents them from falling even while in deep REM sleep. The alpha naturally assumes the most exposed position. He is the biological shield between the vulnerable core of the troop and the dark interior of the tree. Despite the immense pressure of his rank, biology demands rest. His visual processing shuts down, transferring defense protocols to his auditory network. As vision fails, the sensory hierarchy of the canopy completely flips. Even in deep sleep, their acoustic radar remains highly active, filtering the chaotic nocturnal noise for the specific frequencies of approaching doom. They have survived the diurnal gauntlet. Now, they must outlast the long, terrifying reign of the night shift. The equatorial sun vanishes in minutes. With its departure, The rules of engagement are rewritten instantly. Plants that remain tightly shut during the searing heat of the day now aggressively blossom, releasing intense perfumes to attract nocturnal pollinators. Mammalian flight dominates the airspace. Bats emerge by the millions, utilizing sonar to navigate the pitch-black labyrinth with flawless precision. But the true horrors of the Amazon night do not fly. They stalk the flooded floors and silent mid-canopy branches, armed with infrared vision and lethal patience. The sun has set, but the hunt has only just begun. The true rulers of the Amazon are finally awake. For the cold-blooded assassins of the night canopy, visual light is entirely unnecessary. They hunt in a completely different physical dimension. These labial pits are hypersensitive thermal receptors. They detect the minute infrared radiation emitted by the body heat of living prey. Amphibians must broadcast their presence to attract mates, but every acoustic signal in the dark is an invitation to be consumed. The boa triangulates the thermal signature, combining the acoustic beacon with the glowing heat map painted across its neurological center. The strike takes less than a fifth of a second, but the bite is only the anchor. It is the prelude to a mechanical execution. Constriction does not crush bone. It is an overwhelming application of pressure designed to arrest the circulatory system. By preventing the lungs from expanding and stopping blood flow to the brain, cardiac arrest is induced in a matter of seconds. The silent efficiency of the thermal strike leaves no trace. The canopy simply swallows the victim, and the chorus resumes. Above the canopy, the open sky is heavily contested. Here, the battle relies not on heat, but on the manipulation of sound. Bats navigate the darkness utilizing biological sonar. They emit high-frequency ultrasonic clicks, mapping the returning echoes to construct a flawless, three-dimensional reality. But evolution guarantees an arms race. Certain insects have developed countermeasures to detect this invisible acoustic net. The moth's primitive ear detects the incoming sonar. The rapid increase in pulse frequency tells the insect that a targeting lock has been established. The moth executes a drastic evasive maneuver, simply surrendering to gravity to break the bat's acoustic tracking. The aerial predator relies on rapid recalibration. A missed strike is instantly abandoned for the next available echo. Utilizing its tail membrane as a biological catcher's mitt, the bat processes the kill entirely in motion, never reducing its speed. The sheer volume of insects consumed by bats each night actively regulates the entire ecosystem, preventing the defoliation of the canopy. At the absolute bottom of the forest, no moonlight penetrates. The sensory deprivation is absolute, but life generates its own illumination. Bioluminescent fungi break down the dead wood, using specialized enzymes to emit a cold, green light. This is not an accident of chemistry. The light acts as a visual lure, attracting insects to spread their spores through the dark, stagnant air. The railroad worm weaponizes the same chemistry. It is the only creature on Earth that produces both red and green bioluminescence. Many insects cannot perceive red light. The worm uses its headlamp to illuminate prey without revealing its own position. The attack is highly specialized. The larva targets the soft connective tissue between the heavy chitin plates. It neutralizes targets 10 times its size, breaking down complex proteins into a liquid broth in the absolute dark. To survive the night shift, mammals must radically adapt their biology, sacrificing daytime advantages for nocturnal supremacy. The owl monkey is the only truly nocturnal primate in the Amazon. Its eyes have evolved to be disproportionately massive. They have sacrificed color vision entirely. The retina is packed purely with light-gathering rods, turning the pitch-black jungle into a bright, monochromatic landscape. By shifting its foraging cycle to the night, it completely bypasses the brutal competition for fruit that dominates the day. Enhanced night vision grants them the reflex speed to pluck airborne protein directly from the shadows. But the night belongs to the felines. Perfect vision cannot overcome perfect stealth. The margay possesses a highly developed tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina that bounces light through the eye twice, maximizing night vision. It is the only feline capable of rotating its ankles backwards, allowing it to climb down trees headfirst like a squirrel. It is the ultimate canopy assassin. The ambush relies on verticality, utilizing gravity to multiply its kinetic impact. Primate reflexes demand an instantaneous surrender to the void. Falling is dangerous. The claws are fatal. The margin between life and death is measured in milliseconds. The feline recalculates its energy expenditure, and the hunt resumes. As the night deepens, the true apex predators of the Amazon mobilize in the flooded basement. The black caiman enters a state of torpor, drastically lowering its heart rate to conserve energy, waiting for the current to deliver prey. These integumentary sensory organs are more sensitive than primate fingertips. They detect microscopic pressure waves generated by swimming fish in complete darkness. The fish registers only a solid object in the current. The caiman's camouflage is both visual and acoustic. The reptile triggers an explosive muscular contraction, transitioning from absolute stillness to lethal velocity instantly. Armor and muscle triumph in the dark. The biological hierarchy of the flooded forest remains undisputed. Every layer of this ecosystem, from the submerged roots to the emergent canopy, operates on a ruthless cycle of caloric exchange. But the night is not permanent. The atmospheric engine of the basin continues to turn, dropping the temperature until the air reaches its dew point. A thick, suffocating mist blankets the forest. This is the quietest moment in the Amazon, a brief, exhausted pause between two violent realms. The water cycle reasserts its dominance. Millions of gallons of atmospheric moisture are returned to the thirsty roots. The first light triggers a cascade of biological alarms. The diurnal shift awakens, deeply wired to the rising of the sun. The apex predator readies itself. The slate is wiped clean. Yesterday's caloric victories are already exhausted. The solar engine ignites. The brutal, highly organized architecture of the jungle resumes its relentless pace. There is no malice in this vertical battlefield. It is a masterpiece of biology, perfectly balanced by millions of years of chemical and mechanical evolution. Everything is connected. The death of a monkey fuels an eagle. The fallen fruit feeds the boars. The rotting leaves power the fungi. It is a single, breathing superorganism, a beautiful, violent, and perfect cycle. This is the hidden war of the Amazon,